JH, good to see you.
How are you, sir?
Good. Now, last time we were here, we talked about the drag concept, which brings all of these fundamentals together. So the fundamentals are what you want to have. You want to have the alignment all the way. You want to be in the sequence all the way, and you only ever want to be in that one direction, okay? So that's sort of asking a lot, how do I achieve all of that? Well, the drag concept, which the drag concept is that the apex stays away from the base and the base moves away from the apex all the way, okay? And that's a choice of words, for deliberate choice of words. From my perspective, this stays away. I keep it away, and then I move away from the base, okay? From the club's perspective, it moves away from me as it swings. So I'm keeping it away, I'm moving away from it, and it's moving away from me. So that's three basic motion profiles in the swing. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, there's how I treat the club relative to me. I treat it relative to me by keeping it away from me. I treat myself relative to the club by keeping myself away from the club. And then the club, if it had a brain of its own, is staying away from me. Yep. So that's a lot of away movement, isn't it?
But it's the one thing that's resonated with me.
Right.
The one thing I've never done in my entire life.
Right. Well, it's the drag concept,
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
Now, as you get in the alignment, right, the way to get in the alignment is through being folded over in opposition. And you could see the lines here, right? Later on, I'll put some lines on this and you'll see it. When I get into the opposition, I need to use this concept of drag to create the opposition.
Yep.
So the club goes away from me, and I go away from the club, and I get into my opposition, okay? So I get the club away from me, and I go away from the club, and that gives me my opposition. Now, on top of that, the club would go away from me, and that's your swing. But from my perspective, what I have to do, treat the club a certain way, treat myself a certain way in relation to the club. There's two things. Then the club treats me a certain way. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay. So we can always break it down to that. There's a lot of people watching this might be going, well, what's the club going to do? It's not going to do anything, unless you make it do it, which is fair enough. It's a fair enough criticism or
that's
critical
just
thought.
The dynamics of
Right.
a human attached to that.
Right.
You make that do something.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you were playing baseball, for example, and you were getting up there, and the moment you swung that bat, right, the moment you acted and you swung that bat, okay, that bat's now swinging. Now, in order to stop that swinging, you would have to stop. Otherwise, it's going to keep swinging, right?
Yeah. Elementary, dear Watson.
Okay, so that's one of Newton's laws. So the point is that the club will swing. We're going to let it swing, and when it does, it's doing something different. It's a different thing, what the club's doing, to what I'm doing to the club away from me, and what I'm doing to get away from the club. It's a different thing altogether, okay? Now that's a little bit abstract, but I want you to see at the end result, the reason for that abstraction is so that you never need to change what you're doing. During the swing, the club is responsible for changing everything that the camera would see changing. You're going to be doing the same things at the end of the swing after you've hit the ball that you were doing before the swing moved. That's what this method's all about. That's what these fundamentals are for, okay? So that you can do one thing to hit one shot. That's the end game we're looking for. Now, if I was taking myself back to my 12 or 13-year-old self, I wanted to hit that ball at that target. That was all I cared about. Didn't care about how. And like millions of others before me and millions of others yet to come, juniors who play golf, if allowed to learn in this way, I learnt to literally do one thing to hit that ball there once. It wasn't like 17 things I was trying to do. It was one thing. Now, you could break it down, you could analyze it, you could say, well, you took it here, 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 and here, and you could make You could make it 50 things if you wanted to. But from the act of doing it as a player, I only had to do one thing, and that was hit a shot. Okay, so this method of swinging is geared around that idea that we're going to hit one shot once each time, and so we're going to have one action to achieve that. Fair enough?
Well, it's easy if we've got one action. That's
Well,
the holy
yes.
grail, isn't it?
Right.
One action to think about,
Right.
to feel.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I want to start you here because rather than build it from the bottom up, which, you know, arguably is not a bad way to go because, you know, you can learn the skills. I want you to understand what it is that you're hoping to gain out of this so that those initial first steps, I believe, will make more sense, right? Why am I trying to put myself in a position where I feel restricted in my movements, right? The reason I want you to be restricted, John, is that I want the club to be the thing that's unrestricted to move you versus you unrestricted to move the club, because the latter is a random pile of crap and the former is what all the top players are doing. So it's available to you, but you have to start in the right manner and you have to start with the right idea.
Well, no argument from me.
Okay?
No.
Great. It's apex to base in sequence, in opposition, in drag, and then it's the club in one direction.